Is it talent, genius, destiny, or something far more dangerous, a kind of hunger that refuses to sleep? More than 2,000 years ago, a young king from a small rocky kingdom at the edge of Greece set out to answer this question. By the time he was 32, he had redrawn the map of the world, shattered empires older than his own nation, and carved a legend so large that even today, he feels more myth than man. His name was Alexander, but the world would remember him as the Great. But greatness is not a title. It's a force. And the real story of Alexander is not simply what he conquered. It's what drove him to keep going, even when there was nothing left to win. This is the story of an unstoppable legend and the human engine behind impossible ambition. The making of an unstoppable mind, a boy raised between two worlds. Alexander was born into contradiction. His father, King Philip II, was a ruthless commander and a political mastermind. A man who had transformed Macedon from a backwater into a rising military power. His mother, Olympias, was fierce, spiritual, and convinced her son carried divine blood. From childhood, Alexander was told two versions of himself. From Philip, "You are mortal, work harder." From Olympias, "You are destined, claim the world." Two truths, two pressures. Together, they forged a mind that could never be satisfied with ordinary life. Then came the teacher who changed everything, Aristotle. He taught Alexander philosophy, ethics, politics, biology, but above all, he taught him this: excellence is a habit, virtue is action, greatness is a choice. Alexander didn't just listen, he believed it. The first test, Bucephalus. The moment that foreshadowed his future came when he was 10. A vast, untamed stallion, Bucephalus, was brought before Philip. No soldier could tame it. The horse reared, kicked, and terrified even experienced riders. Alexander stepped forward. He noticed something the grown men didn't. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. He turned Bucephalus toward the sun so the shadow fell behind them. The wild beast calmed. Alexander mounted him and conquered him. Philip, stunned, said, "My son, seek a kingdom worthy of you. Macedonia is too small." The words hit Alexander like a prophecy. A kingdom too small, a world waiting, a fire lit, the king who would not stop. At age 20, Philip was assassinated, and Alexander became king. Within 2 years, he had crushed revolts across Greece. Within 4 years, he had launched his greatest campaign, the invasion of Persia, the largest empire on earth. But Alexander did not march on Persia because he wanted land. He marched because he wanted immortality. Persia, where legends are forged. When Alexander entered Persia, he was outnumbered at every major battle. At Granicus, he led the charge himself. At Issus, he broke through the Persian center with a cavalry wedge. At Gaugamela, he faced an army 5 times the size of his own, and won through pure strategy and speed. Each victory fed the legend. Each victory deepened the hunger. Alexander began to believe he was meant for this, that the world was responding to his will. His soldiers believed it too, because he didn't ask men to do anything he wouldn't do himself. He bled with them, marched with them, shared their food, and in battle he always took the most dangerous position. That is the first secret of unstoppable people. They lead from the front, not the throne. The conquest of Egypt and a new identity. When Alexander arrived in Egypt, the people welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. There, he made a pilgrimage through the desert to the Oracle of Siwa, where priests greeted him with a title no mortal should hear, Son of Zeus. Was it symbolic? Political? True? Historians debate it. What matters is this: Alexander believed it. Whether real or imagined, the moment solidified his identity. He was not just a king, not just a conqueror. He was now a figure rewritten by destiny itself. From this point on, Alexander became unstoppable not just because he could conquer, but because he believed he must. Into Asia, when ambition turns into obsession. After defeating Persia, Alexander had everything a ruler could want: land, wealth, power, the loyalty of thousands, the admiration of millions. But everything is never enough for someone who believes they were born for more. So he kept marching, east, toward India. The journey was brutal. Rivers, jungles, monsoons, sickness, exhaustion. But Alexander pushed forward. At the Battle of the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus, an enormous war elephant army, and conditions his men had never experienced. He won. But the victory cost him dearly: men, morale, and the final piece of his humanity. When he announced plans to go even farther, into lands no Greek had ever seen, his army mutinied. After 10 years of non-stop war, they simply broke. And here we learn the second secret of unstoppable people. Ambition has a price. Every victory demands something from you. Eventually, the cost comes due. Alexander wept privately, not because of defeat, but because there were still worlds left unconquered. The return and the fragility behind the legend. Alexander returned to Babylon, planning new campaigns, Arabia, maybe even the Western Mediterranean. But his body was failing. Years of wounds, exhaustion, and fever caught up with him. At 32, he became gravely ill. Soldiers lined up outside his room, begging to see him. Too weak to speak, he raised his hand to show he was still alive. Days later, he was gone. A legend halted, not by an army, but by the limits of mortality. When his generals asked who should inherit his empire, he said, "To the strongest." It was either brilliant or the final proof that Alexander never imagined a world without him. His empire collapsed within a generation, but his story did not. Because the unstoppable are not remembered for what they build. They're remembered for what they attempted. What truly makes someone unstoppable? So what made Alexander unstoppable? Was it genius? Yes, but many geniuses remain forgotten. Was it bravery? Yes, but bravery alone doesn't change history. Was it strategy? Yes, though others were strategic too. Alexander was unstoppable because of something deeper. He united ambition with action, vision with discipline, dreams with danger. He wanted to see how far a single human life could go, and he was willing to pay the price. But his story also raises a harder question. Is being unstoppable the same as being fulfilled? Because Alexander conquered the world, but never conquered his own restlessness. His ambition gave him immortality, but it also denied him peace. So the question is not just, how do you become unstoppable, but why do you want to be? The Unfinished Conquest. Alexander's life leaves us with a paradox. He achieved more than almost any human in history, yet he died feeling incomplete. He reached the edges of the known world, yet believed there were still worlds left to win. He created an empire that collapsed, yet a legend that hasn't faded in 2,300 years. Maybe that's the truth about unstoppable people. They burn brighter, but burn faster. They see farther, but rest less. They change the world, but belong nowhere. But there is something in all of us that understands Alexander. We all have a part that wants to break limits, to test ourselves, to see what we're capable of, to leave something behind that matters. You don't need to conquer an empire to feel this. It might be a dream, a project, a craft, a mission, a purpose. Alexander's life reminds us, greatness isn't measured by what you conquer, but by what you refuse to stop pursuing. So ask yourself, what is the thing that won't let you sleep? The thing that scares you and excites you? The thing you would chase even if the world told you it was impossible? That is your empire, your battlefield, your legend waiting to be built. You don't need armies. You need direction, discipline, a fire that doesn't go out when life gets difficult. Alexander was unstoppable because he lived with one belief. There is always farther to go. Maybe the world doesn't need another conqueror, but it could use more people who chase their highest potential, not for glory, not for power, but because life is too short to live small. So the real question isn't, was Alexander great? It's, what will you do with the time and battles given to you? Because in the end, every one of us is given a world to conquer, even if the map looks very different. If you found this story fascinating, like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Questions channel, where we explore the civilizations, ideas, and mysteries that shaped humanity.